Urgent question, Sir Peter Bottomley.
Mr Speaker, thank you for allowing the question. To ask the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs if he'll make a statement on whether he'll use the UK's constructive dialogue with the government of Bahrain publicly to raise the case of 2 prisoners who have been sentenced to death following torture and who face a hearing this Monday when their death sentences may be confirmed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The UK and Bahrain continue to have a close and important relationship. We benefit from an ongoing, open and genuine dialogue in which we work together on mutually beneficial issues whilst also raising points of significant difference with one another. It is because of this long-standing partnership that we're able to have candid conversations about matters of importance to the UK, in particular our human rights concerns. Our relationship allows us to raise sensitive and difficult issues, both privately and publicly, in a constructive manner in order to uphold our moral responsibility on human rights issues. We have and will continue to raise the cases both of Mohammed Ramadhan and Husain Moosa at senior levels with the government of Bahrain. On the 8th of January, on the 8th of January, British Embassy Manama officials attended the final session of the Court of Appeal for the retrial of the 2 men mentioned. Both individuals were convicted of terrorist charges and given the death sentence again. On the 8th of January, the former Minister for the Middle East and North Africa publicly stated our deep concern that the death sentences were again handed out, and the UK's position has not changed on this matter. We continue to actively monitor these 2 cases as they are taken to the Court of Cassation for final review. The UK's position on the use of death penalty is long-standing and unequivocal. We oppose its use in all circumstances and in all countries as a matter of principle. The government of Bahrain is fully aware of our view. This was made explicitly clear by the former Minister for the Middle East and North Africa to a senior Bahraini counterpart last year. It was then reinforced by my noble friend the Lord Ahmed in the other place, who issued a public statement expressing the UK's opposition to the use of the death penalty in response to actions taken in Bahrain. I can assure the House that our efforts to raise these cases and also the broader issues of the use of capital punishment with the Bahrain authorities will continue. Bahrain is a Foreign and Commonwealth Office human rights priority country, in part due to its policy surrounding the death penalty. We continue to monitor developments on all matters that relate to human rights within the country. We remain absolutely committed to the promotion of universal freedoms and upholding human rights globally. And this has been made clear just this week with the introduction of the UK's first autonomous human rights sanction regime. Thank you, sir.
Peter.
Mr Speaker, the House will be grateful to the Minister. I want to make plain that the first constituency case I took was of someone who I thought had been wrongly convicted in this country. It took 5 years to establish that. I'm working on 2 long-term cases in the United States of America. Bahrain is important to us politically, diplomatically and militarily, and we hope it's a mutual relationship. We know that there are times when the Bahrain, as a sovereign country, has paid attention to outside prompting, and we hope that with respect they'll listen to what's said here, what was said in another place yesterday, and in the 3 debates which have taken place in Parliament during the last year or so. Can I ask that the views of Parliament are put to the Bahrain authorities with our respectful greetings and say that if either the Court of Cassation on Monday or a sovereign intervention of intervening would make a difference, that would be noticed and appreciated and will affect the way Bahrain is seen. I don't need to say what would happen if that does not happen. I wish these men well, I wish Bahrain well, and I hope that the work by this House, by Amnesty International, by Reprieve and by Human Rights Watch will get the proper attention it deserves.
Yeah.
Mr Speaker, I know that the Bahrainis do take seriously the views of the United Kingdom and indeed this House. We as yet do not know what the outcome of the Court of Cassation will be. If the death penalty is handed down again, I can assure the House that our opposition to the death penalty will be restated at both official and ministerial level to the Government of Bahrain.
Shadow Minister Stephen Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I commend the honourable gentleman on his question on this crucial matter. Trials based on evidence secured through torture, including allegations that interrogators threatened to rape the wife of Mohammed Ramadhan in front of him after a series of brutal beatings, and hung Husain Moosa from the ceiling for 3 days while beating his genitals with batons. And finally, they have been sentenced to death. So condemnation of the trials of these two men has been almost universal from many of the organisations the honourable gentleman referred to. All have condemned the use of torture and all have called for their death sentences to be quashed. And yet, unfortunately, we've yet to see a decisive statement on this from the government. And worse still, the two Bahraini security bodies that enabled this torture, the Special Investigations Unit and the Ombudsman for the Ministry of the Interior, were funded by this government. So the government says that it engages with the Bahraini government on human rights, on the use of torture and on the death penalty, and I've listened carefully to what the Minister said. But where are the results from that engagement, Mr. Speaker, given this case and many others? And since 2012, the government's provided over 5 million of technical assistance, and yet the number of executions has increased and human rights abuses have increased. The Foreign Secretary spoke earlier this week about Magnitsky sanctions, absolutely rightly so, and the UK's importance of human rights and opposing the death penalty, opposing torture. So will the Minister in that light now condemn the use of torture by the security forces in Bahrain in these two cases rather than just monitoring the case? Will he raise this matter? Will the Prime Minister raise this matter with the King? Will he raise it directly with his opposite number? Will he press the Government of Bahrain to establish an independent commission of inquiry to conduct an Istanbul Protocol-compliant investigation into the torture allegations for these two men? Will he freeze assistance to the Bahraini security bodies that are potentially implicated in this case? And will he publish the human rights assessments and indeed the assessments against the OSJA guidance, which the Foreign Office is supposed to use when funding these programmes, to assess whether or not the programmes of support are implicated in torture and the use of the death penalty? It's one thing, Mr. Speaker, for the Foreign Secretary to speak of taking action against those complicit in torture, the death penalty, those who are blood-drenched, but it's another for the government to walk the walk. So time is of the essence in this case. Will the Minister speak out? Will this government speak out at the highest levels and do what it can to get this death sentence commuted?
Listen.
I thank the honourable gentleman for the points that he's raised. I can assure him that the United Kingdom government, Her Majesty's government, opposes torture as well as the death penalty, and that has been communicated widely and regularly, and that is well known around the world. He makes reference to the OSJA process, and I can assure him that that is a robust process that ensures that when the British government interacts or trains or supports other governments around the world, that training or support is not used to facilitate human rights abuses. This is a process which constantly reviews our relationships, and I'm confident is robust. With regard to the oversight bodies he mentioned, it should be noted that those oversight bodies have brought about a change in the way that Bahrain works. There have been police officers and prison officers who have been brought to justice because of the oversight bodies that we support. The Bahraini government has demonstrated, in fact the Bahraini royal family have demonstrated a desire to improve their structures, their transparency and the resilience of their governmental structures, and these oversight bodies that we support are a part of that. And whilst they continue to express the desire to improve their structures and head in a positive direction, we will maintain our support to enable them to do so. As I said, Bahrain remains a human rights priority country. We wish to see improvement where the government expresses desire to implement that improvement. We will continue to support them to do so.
Chair of the Select Committee, Tom Tugendar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome very much the urgent question by my right honourable friend, the member for Worthing West. And I draw my right honourable friend, the Minister's attention to the Foreign Affairs Committee report of 2018, where we raised questions about this funding because of the torture that we've seen of Mr. Ramadan and Mr. Moosa. Could I urge him to think very hard about the position of Her Majesty's government on this? And could I urge him as well to write to His Majesty King Hamad and remind him Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most compassionate, the most merciful, are the names that are given to the Prophet, peace be upon him. And so perhaps this may be one of those moments where His Highness could think hard, His Majesty could think hard about the decisions that are before him.
I thank my honourable friend for the points that he's raised, and his points are very well made. I think one of the advantages of having over 200 years of relationship with the Bahraini is that we can speak candidly, we can speak clearly, and we can speak at the highest levels. We are comfortable, more than comfortable, to reiterate our position, our opposition to the death penalty and torture, and we are happy to restate that at the highest levels within Bahraini society.
We head to the SNP spokesperson on this, Brendan O'Hara. Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the SNP spokesperson on international human rights and as chair of the APPG on democracy and human rights in the Gulf, I congratulate the honourable member for Worthing West in securing this urgent question. The Minister and his FCO colleagues will know I've become something of a serial correspondent on this issue recently, as recourse to the death penalty in Bahrain has become increasingly commonplace. Mr. Speaker, since 2012, the United Kingdom has been providing Bahrain with what it calls technical assistance. And that technical assistance is designed to build effective and accountable institutions, strengthen the rule of law, and assist with police and judicial reform. It's clearly not happening, because given that the International Rehabilitation Council for Torture Victims has declared that the investigation of this case was carried out by the Bahrain Special Investigation Unit and it was seriously flawed, it failed to meet even the minimum standards of international recognition and breached the Istanbul Protocol. Will the Minister now urgently review that technical assistance programme to Bahrain, and will he agree to suspend it immediately if these death sentences are carried out?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and the point I made in response to the Shadow Minister is that the OSJAR process, which is designed to ensure that where the United Kingdom government provides assistance to a foreign government, that does not in any way help to facilitate human rights abuses, as I say, is robust. It is held constantly in review, and we review our relationships regularly. So obviously, by definition, our relationship with Bahrain and any future technical assistance will be assessed against the criteria that we have put out. I would, however, say that a number of the oversight bodies are only in existence because of the strength of the relationship between the United Kingdom and the government of Bahrain, and where those bodies are seeking to improve, to become more transparent, more robust, we will seek to help them do so. If we disengage, then I do not believe that that would actually be conducive to improving the human rights situation in Bahrain.
We now head to Bosworth to Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his comments on this case. And building up on that engagement, I wonder what action the government's taking to make sure Bahrain is meeting its human rights obligations, and wider still, what steps is my right honourable friend taking to continue to position the UK at the forefront of promoting human rights, to make sure that rights really are respected both in Bahrain but across the world?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. The UK government remains committed to promoting universal freedoms and human rights around the world. It is and will remain at the heart of our foreign policy and will ensure that the UK remains a force for good. Being able to promote human rights cannot just be done in the abstract, and it is easy to do so from these green benches. To be a real meaningful champion of human rights, we have to have influence on governments. As I say, Bahrain is a human rights priority country, and through our close relationship with Bahrain, we seek to persuade and support them on a journey to improve their human rights situation. And that is how effective governments operate.
6 and 7 are withdrawn, so I go to Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With only 5 days to save their lives, and in light of the UK assistance to the bodies that enable their torture and death sentences, can the Minister confirm the Government will make effective representation to the cases of Mohammed Ramadhan and Husain Moosa before the Court of Cassation's final decision on Monday? Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Lady for the point that she's raised. As I've said before, it's the strength of our relationship between the UK and Bahrain that allows us to have frank, candid and regular conversations at both senior official, ministerial and head of state level about a whole range of things. I can assure her that if the death penalties are upheld through the Court of Cassation process, that the UK will both publicly and loudly remind Bahrain of our opposition to the death penalty, and we will continue to seek to have that set aside.
We now head to Wellingborough with Peter Bone. Peter Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Listening to the excellent Minister, I'm wondering perhaps whether the comments should be made in private to Bahrain rather than necessarily in public to get the result that everyone wants. But can I ask him in particular about freedom of the press in Bahrain, because a free press helps guarantee human rights. And what efforts are being made to ensure that there is freedom of the press in Bahrain?
Minister. I thank my honourable friend. One of the first events that I took part in upon being appointed as a minister was the Foreign and Commonwealth Office hosting journalists from North Africa and the Middle East to support media freedom. And media freedom remains a priority for the UK government. There is planned legislation in Bahrain to provide additional protection to journalists. However, the timing and detail around that legislation remains vague. We continue to engage at senior level to push for this legislation to be brought forward and for the protections of journalists to be protected and enhanced in Bahrain.
To Scotland to visit Margaret Farray. Margaret Farray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As co-chair of the Parliamentary Human Rights Group, on Monday myself and my honourable friend, the member for Argyll and Bute, wrote to the FCO requesting an urgent meeting regarding the cases of Mohammed Ramadhan and Husain Moosa. With less than 1 week to save these two people's lives, and in light of the UK assistance to the Special Investigations Unit that enabled their torture and imminent death sentences, will he meet with us to discuss these cases before the Court of Cassation's final decision on Monday?
Mr. Speaker, I am always happy to meet with parliamentary colleagues about important issues like this. The timing of the likely timing of the Court of Cassation judgment may make it difficult to do so before Monday. However, I can assure her that we will continue to make every effort to prevent the death penalty, whether it be in Bahrain or more widely. And I can assure her that even if the death penalty is upheld by the Court of Cassation, that will not be the end of our efforts to prevent the death penalty in Bahrain. But as I say, I'm more than happy to facilitate a meeting with her and parliamentary colleagues.
Rob Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if my right honourable friend could tell the House what wider measures his department is taking to ensure political reform and democratic accountability in Bahrain.
I thank my honourable friend. Bahrain remains one of only 2 countries in the Gulf with an elected parliament. And UK support has strengthened the institutional capacity of the Bahraini Parliament's Secretariat. We've enhanced staff skills to support MPs in their oversight of the government, and in addition, we have helped local NGOs raise Bahraini youth awareness of democracy and parliamentary work, and we will continue to pursue these things.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that when it comes to engaging with countries in the Gulf, and I chair the APPG on Qatar, amongst others, that I preach a sermon of pragmatism and humility in engaging with these countries. But surely we can only encourage progress if we see it actually happening, and expressing desire for change is not good enough. The OSJA process that the Minister relies on is one that has been criticised by the Home Affairs Select Committee as being not fit for purpose. So if he is going to rely on that OSJA process, will he publish the assessment that was carried out under it in relation to this assistance, and will he in fact promote within government an overhaul of that whole process?
I thank the honourable gentleman for the points that he's made. It was a Conservative Foreign Secretary that brought in the OSJA process, and as I have said, it is by its definition one that is constantly under review, and we seek to always improve it. But I would make the point that the oversight bodies that have been criticised in this chamber today are only recently in existence, and their existence is in a significant part because of the work that the UK government has done with the Bahrainis. There is a desire to see these organisations and their processes improve, and our technical assistance is part of that improvement programme. It would be, I think, entirely counterproductive to suggest that these organisations are dispensed with, because I cannot see how that would increase or improve the oversight of the human rights situation. So therefore the aim surely should be to improve them, and it's through our close working relationship that we do seek to improve them.
Hendra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend outline to the House what steps the government has taken to ensure Bahrain is clear on the UK's position regarding human rights?
I thank my honourable friend. I think the best way of ensuring that Bahrain understands our position is to say it loudly, and to say it regularly, and to say it directly. And as I say, we have had a relationship of over 2 centuries with the Bahrainis, and that does give us perhaps a unique ability to speak candidly and frankly at the very highest levels. And I can assure my honourable friend that we will continue to do so.
We're heading to Dundee West with Chris Law. Chris Law.
Mr. Speaker, when the Foreign Secretary announced imposition of Magnitsky-style powers to sanction those complicit in human rights violations and abuses earlier this week, he said, "This country makes it crystal clear to those who abuse their power to inflict unimaginable suffering that we won't look the other way. Therefore, will the Minister confirm that the UK government will impose a human rights sanction on both individuals and organisations and Bahraini authorities who have been complicit in the torture of Mohammed Ramadhan and Husain Moosa?"
Mr. Speaker, I was incredibly proud when my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, announced the UK's independent sanctions regime and demonstrated both to the House and to the world that the United Kingdom takes human rights abuses seriously and will deal with them. Whilst we were a member of the European Union's human rights sanctions regime, we had a convention where we did not discuss potential future sanctions, and that remains the convention under our domestic sanctions regime.
Speaker, can I congratulate my right honourable friend, the Father of the House, for bringing forward this urgent question in such a timely manner. Would my right honourable friend, the Minister, agree with me that cutting our modest and highly monitored technical assistance to Bahrain, particularly the SIU, the Special Investigations Unit, and the Ombudsman, would likely make matters worse? And will he use the influence that he has with Bahrain and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to ensure that judiciary is distanced from the executive, and also that sentencing discretion is reduced in those 2 countries, since it too often produces perverse and unpredictable outcomes?
I thank my honourable friend and my predecessor, who knows better than many the nature of our relationship, and I commend him for the work that he did directly on this issue with the Bahrainis. As I have found in many cases, both public and privately, that I commend the work that he's done and agree wholeheartedly with it. It is the strength of our relationship, the long-standing, strong and powerful relationship between the governments of the UK and the government of Bahrain that allows us to support improvements when they're put in place, to ensure those oversight bodies improve their independence and their effectiveness, and we will continue to push for that improvement.
Heading to Greater Manchester to visit Andrew Gwynn. Andrew Gwynn.
Thank you, and can I thank the Minister for his statement arising from this urgent question. This is now very serious, given that both Mohammed Ramadhan and Husain Moosa are at risk of imminent execution should their sentence, based on a torture-obtained confession, be upheld in 5 days' time. So will the Minister ask our ambassador to Bahrain urgently to attend their trial in Bahrain as an international observer?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. And actually, one of the byproducts of the strength of our relationship is the ability of Her Majesty's ambassador to attend trials of this nature in Bahrain. I've spoken with Her Majesty's ambassador to Bahrain on a number of occasions, most recently, in fact, this morning, about this very issue. And I can assure the honourable gentleman that we remain fully engaged, that he and his team are fully engaged in the country, and if the Court of Cassation hands down a death sentence again, we will continue. We will not stop at that point. We will continue to dissuade the Bahrainis from utilising the death penalty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank my right honourable friend for the comments he's made so far. It's clear that our relationship with Bahrain is not just strong and deep diplomatically, but exists across a range of measures from business to the armed forces. So could he reassure the House that we'll use that range of channels to encourage diplomatic, human rights and political reform in Bahrain?
Thank my honourable friend for the points that he's raised, and he is absolutely right that the strength of a relationship with Bahrain stretches across a number of areas: commercial, military, security, social. And I've said a number of times, but I think it's worth repeating, it is because of the strength of our relationship, the long-standing relationship, that we are able to have difficult conversations with the Bahrainis around issues like press freedom and human rights.
There are 24 prisoners on death row in Bahrain, 10 in imminent danger of execution, including Zahir Abdullah and Hussein Rashid, whose cases I raised with the Foreign Secretary in his statement on human rights abuses on Monday. His reply that the designation of abusers would be blind to ulterior considerations, somewhat undermined by the Trade Secretary's decision the next day to resume arms trade with Saudi Arabia. So will the Minister look again at the responsibility of individuals in the Bahraini regime, and in particular Prince Nasser bin Hamad, the son of the king, who's alleged to have been involved in torture going back to the Arab Spring, and whose diplomatic immunity was removed by the High Court here?
Minister. The honourable gentleman conflates two fundamentally different issues when he talks about the export licences and our sanctions regime. The sanctions regime that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, put forward this week highlights the huge importance that Her Majesty's government puts to enhancing and protecting human rights. And those individuals that were sanctioned, I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to put those into force. We will continue to protect human rights, and we will continue to encourage governments around the world, including governments in the Gulf, to improve their record on human rights. And we will do so both publicly and privately, and in whatever the most effective way is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that the right to a fair trial is enshrined in the Constitution of Bahrain, and therefore we must encourage the government of Bahrain to follow due process in all cases?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. This is This is something that the Bahraini government have demonstrated a desire to improve. They want to have free a judicial system. They want to have a robust judicial system, and we want to help them do so. And it's through that, it's through the technical assistance that we will help to encourage the improvements in these core institutions of Bahraini society.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Under Britain's Integrated Activity Fund, the Special Investigation Unit in Bahrain has received UK taxpayer-funded training through the College of Policing. Now, this institution is now shown to be complicit in the whitewash investigation which led to these men's death sentences being reimposed. Will my right honourable friend now halt any support to these Bahraini oversight institutions which have demonstrated to do no more than facilitate whitewashing of human rights abuses and allow an escalation of the death penalty to be used in that country?
The Foreign and Commonwealth Office does not currently provide funding or training to the Bahraini Royal Academy of Policing. The UK has been providing a range of technical, practical assistance to the government of Bahrain since 2013, as I say, to bring about improvements in the robustness of their oversight bodies. Where abuses have taken place, actually those public servants have been brought to justice, and my understanding is that 97 police officers or prison officers have been brought to justice, in significant part because of the oversight bodies that the UK government has helped to strengthen and improve.
Bob Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand, and nobody's mentioned this so far, that both men were convicted on one confession and also on forensic evidence, victims and witness testimonies, as well as mobile phone records, including text messages which coordinated the actual attack, which lured police officers into a deadly trap. One policeman was killed. Others, including civilians, were badly hurt. I visited Bahrain's independent human rights oversight body, and I was impressed, actually, by its independence and involvement, and also its reports. It can go anywhere. I do not support the death penalty, and I hope that if this sentence is upheld on Monday, His Majesty the King of Bahrain will commute the sentences. However, would the Minister agree with me that Bahrain's judiciary system is pretty fair and very open to scrutiny, especially looking around the rest of the Middle East?
I thank my honourable and gallant friend for the points that he has raised. I'm not in a position to go into detail about all the evidence that was put forward in the trial of these two men, but make the point that the oversight bodies that the UK government supports have been able to conduct oversight of the process, and indeed the Court of Cassation is providing oversight of the process. We want to support the judiciary in Bahrain to continue to improve, and indeed we're very pleased that following work that we've done with the Bahrainis, they are now moving to alternative sentencing to reduce the number of people in incarceration, to learn from the UK about how that might be used to reduce the prison population, to reduce overcrowding in prisons, and we want to continue to support the Bahrainis as they move in the right direction when it comes to their criminal justice system.
22 withdrawn, so we'll go to Felicity Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The vast majority of residents in Kensington want to see the end of the death penalty across the world. What steps is Her Majesty's government taking to achieve that end?
I thank the honourable lady, my honourable friend, for the point that she's raised, and she's absolutely right. The UK, both in society and in government, are opposed to the death penalty across the world. We make that point clear, and we make that point clear regularly to our friends around the world, and we will continue to push for that in general. And indeed, in the instance of these two individuals, if, and I remind that the decision has not been made, if the Court of Cassation upholds the death penalty, we will continue to lobby the Bahrainis for that not to be imposed in this case.
We now head to Wakefield to visit Imran Hamid Khan. Press the mute button.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United Kingdom and the Kingdom of Bahrain enjoy a close and enduring relationship born out of friendship and marked by genuine affection and mutual respect. British values, not race or religion, characterise our people, and we place the sanctity of human rights above all considerations. This being indisputable, will my right honourable friend confirm to the House that human rights remain at the heart of Her Majesty's government's every policy, including its foreign policies, and this is exemplified by its designation of Bahrain as a human rights priority country?
My honourable friend is right. Human rights are absolutely at the heart of this government's foreign policy, and it's a topic that I discuss regularly, both with my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, and my noble friend, Lord Ahmed of Wimbledon, who leads for Her Majesty's government on human rights. And we will continue to push for improvements on human rights around the world to all our friends and partners internationally. That will remain, I can assure him and the House, that will remain absolutely at the heart of the foreign policy. It is a point for which the Prime Minister, as I say, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, are rightly proud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following on from the question from the Honourable Member for Glasgow East, the UK's College of Policing was continuing to provide training to the Ombudsman for the Ministry of the Interior and the Bahraini Special Investigations Unit in 2019. Can the Minister inform the House what the College of Policing's training covers on the treatment of prisoners, the use of torture and the threat of death penalty against prisoners?
As I've said to the House on a number of occasions during this session, the United Kingdom strongly opposes the use of the death penalty and the use of torture. Our technical assistance to these oversight bodies is to ensure that they improve in terms of their effectiveness and their transparency. That is what the work that the UK government, in conjunction with the Bahraini government, is seeking to achieve, and we will continue to push for improved accountability, transparency and effectiveness of these oversight bodies.
Kieran Millen.
Can I begin by thanking the constituents of mine that raised this issue with me? I think it serves as a reminder to the Bahraini government of how badly these cases can affect their reputation amongst residents of the world, including crew in Nantwich. We've covered the importance of judicial reform and political reform. Could my honourable friend update us as to what progress we've made in discussing freedom of religion with the Bahraini royal family?
I thank my honourable friend for the point that he's raised. And freedom of religion is also one of the cornerstones of our force for good within UK foreign policy. My honourable friend, the member for Raynham, and I apologise very badly if I've got his constituency wrong. No, so it is Raynham. I do apologise. And I'll update the House, but who works with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in terms of the protection for religious freedom, will take an interest in the point that he's made. We also very much impress upon our friends around the world the importance of religious freedom, and we will do so with regard to Bahrain as well.
Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If their death sentences are confirmed, Mohammed Ramadhan and Husain Moosa will have exhausted all of their legal remedies and will face imminent execution. What is the Minister's assessment of the efficacy of the government's encouragement of Bahrain to follow due process and meet its international human rights obligations?
Well, as I've said, the existence of these oversight bodies is in part because of the work that the UK has done with Bahrain, and we will seek to continue to improve the effectiveness and transparency of those oversight bodies, and that will be an enduring function of our relationship with the Bahrainis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend has already made reference to this in a previous question, but given the key importance that a truly free press has in ensuring human rights, could he provide further assurances to this House that this government will take every possible step to safeguard press freedoms in Bahrain?
I thank my honourable friend. As I said, we do have concerns about the diversity of press in Bahrain. It's part of the reason why Bahrain remains a human rights priority country for the UK. As I say, we know that there is proposed legislation, and we will encourage the Bahrainis to bring this forward swiftly.
Heading to the North East, visiting Ian Mearns. Ian Mearns.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it seems to be the case, and I want to understand why the FCO has defended the Bahraini Ombudsman and the Special Investigation Unit, which it seems to want to improve, in their clearly flawed and heavily influenced investigations in the extraction of so-called confessions by torture from Mohammed and Hussein. If we are to have any continuing measure of international legitimacy, we mustn't be seen to be supporting regimes and agencies within regimes that whitewash allegations of torture, resulting in totally disgraceful death sentences on bogus charges simply for voicing dissent. Mr. Speaker, there's no time to monitor a journey by Bahrain on human rights. I appeal to the Minister not to rest for a second on this issue, and it's a matter of justice and life and death.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a number of honourable and right honourable members have raised these oversight bodies. It is important that there is oversight of the process, so oversight bodies need to exist. It is important that those oversight bodies improve, and we are seeking to improve those oversight bodies. The government of Bahrain desires to improve those oversight bodies, and we are helping them to do so. So where a government or a country where we have had relations for over 2 centuries explicitly seeks to improve the transparency, the effectiveness and the resilience of its institutions, we will seek to help them provide that improvement.